right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the absolute behemoth that is the business of artificial intelligence. It's kind of like a modern-day gold rush. But what's fascinating is that the biggest winners might not be the ones finding the gold, but the ones selling all the picks and shovels.
I mean, you've seen the hype, right? It is everywhere. AI is completely unavoidable. And as Stansberry Research puts it so simply, it just rules all right now. It's changing, well, everything, at a speed that's honestly a little mind-bending.
And this is not just talk. We are talking about an insane amount of money. The market for generative AI, just that one piece of the puzzle, is on track to be worth almost $1 trillion by 2032. Think about that. That's a staggering amount of investment and growth just pouring into one single area.
So where does it all come from? Well, it's definitely not magic. To create and train and run these incredibly complex AI models, it takes a truly astronomical amount of computing power. And that demand has kicked off this crazy modern-day gold rush for the basic infrastructure that makes it all possible.
Okay, so let's dive into the first major battleground. We're going to start at the very bottom, at the most fundamental piece of the puzzle, the super specialized computer chips that are literally the engines of AI.
Now, these are not the normal chips you'd find in your laptop. We're talking about something called a GPU, a graphics processing unit. They were actually first designed for video games to make graphics look amazing. But it turns out their ability to do a ton of calculations all at once makes them perfect for training these giant AI models. They've become the absolute workhorse of the industry.
And when you talk about the AI chip market, there's one name, just one, that completely dominates the entire conversation. It casts this massive shadow over everybody else, and that name is NVIDIA.
To give you an idea of just how dominant they are, this number is just wild. NVIDIA's CEO recently mentioned that they have a cumulative order book, basically future demand, of over $500 billion for their next wave of AI stuff. That is $500 billion in demand for their tech.
But look, while NVIDIA is the king of the hill, they're not completely alone. It's not a total one-horse race. You've got these other giants, AMD and Intel, who are absolute powerhouses in the traditional chip world. And they are pouring billions of dollars into this, racing to build their own AI chips to grab a slice of this massive pie.
So here's the thing. Each one of these powerful little chips can cost tens of thousands of dollars. So how can anyone afford this? Very, very few companies in the world can just go out and buy thousands of these things to build their own AI systems from scratch. So what's the alternative?
Well, that brings us right to the next layer in our gold rush and the second huge battleground, the cloud.
You see, instead of buying those incredibly expensive picks and shovels themselves, what most companies do is they just rent them. They pay for on-demand access to these huge data centers that are already packed to the gills with GPUs, all owned and run by the giants of cloud computing.
And this has kicked off what everyone in the industry calls the cloud wars. It's this super intense, high-stakes fight between three names you definitely know: Amazon's AWS, Microsoft's Azure, and Google Cloud. They're all battling to be the #1 place for building AI.
And this table really tells the story of that race. Amazon's AWS, they're the OG, the pioneer, and they're still the market leader. But just look at those growth numbers. Microsoft's Azure is growing at a blistering 39% year over year, and Google Cloud is right there too, expanding at 32%. They are closing the gap, and they're doing it fast.
So here's where it all clicks together. Remember that $500 billion order book for NVIDIA chips? Who do you think is buying all of them? It's these guys. The cloud giants are, by a huge margin, the biggest and most important customers for the chip makers. It's all one big, powerful, interconnected system.
So that really brings us to the full picture. It shows how these two enormous, multi-billion-dollar markets aren't really separate races at all. They are deeply, deeply connected and totally dependent on each other.
It's really a simple three-step flow when you break it down. Step 1, chip makers like NVIDIA build the super powerful GPUs. Step 2, cloud providers like AWS and Azure buy them up by the thousands and build these planet-sized supercomputers. And Step 3, the AI innovators rent all that power to create the apps and services that we all use every single day.
And believe me, the stakes could not be any higher. This quote from Wedbush Securities really gets at it. Analysts see winning the AI cloud race as the most important thing for future growth. And many believe this is Microsoft's shining moment because of how deeply they're weaving AI into their entire Azure platform.
So, after looking at the chips and the cloud, what's the big takeaway here? What does all this really mean for who's going to own the future?
Okay, so let's just recap the state of play. NVIDIA has a death grip on the foundational hardware. In the cloud, AWS is on top, for now. But Microsoft's Azure is coming on strong, gaining ground like crazy, while Google is right in the mix, leaning on its deep roots in AI research. This race is so far from being over.
And that leaves us with this one last really big thought. The most valuable companies on Earth are all in. They are betting their entire futures on winning this infrastructure war. Because in the great AI gold rush of our time, the fortunes that last might not be made by the people discovering what AI can do, but by the very small group of companies that control the picks, the shovels, and the very land it's all built on.